Today we're outside looking at how to train your eye to better see perspective while you're walking in the street. It's a great way to get in extra practice when you're not drawing. Hi, my name's Kenzo and this is Love Life Drawing. So perspective is something that I used to find quite intimidating, and I think that as well as understanding the principles, it's useful to just practice seeing it. Just get used to it while you're out and about. Even if you're not interested in landscapes or urban sketching, this way of practicing is indirectly useful for your life drawing too. So as Father Ted explained to Dougal, things that are further away look smaller, and we all know that. So that means that this side of the window looks shorter than this side, even though they're the same height in reality. And so these lines connecting them get narrower as they go further away. So again, that's pretty straightforward. The gap between two converging lines gets narrower and narrower until the gap disappears. And the point where the gap disappears is called the vanishing point. A scene like this is often described as single point perspective because the lines all end up at the same vanishing point. They all converge because they're all facing the same way. Okay, so we humans, we love to make things with these straight parallel lines, which is really useful because urban areas become like this grid that really helps us to get a visual understanding of perspective. And so here we got a nice example of some two-point perspective. These lines converge to this point and these converge to this point because they're pointing a different way. Sometimes you can see the vanishing point and sometimes it's not in your view. You may have heard of three-point perspective, which would be when you have a third point that lines converge to. In this case, it would be the vertical lines up the building, and the vanishing point would be really high up in the sky. So the truth is that this is a three-dimensional shape, this boxy building, and so three-point perspective is always going to apply to it. So what people describe as single-point perspective or two-point perspective is just when one or two of the vanishing lines are so far away that the converging of the lines is barely visible. So the lines are almost parallel from our point of view. So that just means that the whole perspective thing and the vanishing point just become a bit irrelevant. So it's practical to see just the convergence to one point. So we're just going to keep things simple and start to look for when one vanishing point is relevant, how the lines converge to it, when two vanishing points are relevant, and those rare cases where three vanishing points are relevant. Another slightly complicated truth is that not everything is going to converge nicely to the same vanishing point, like in this image that I've done here. We can learn about this at the dining table when having breakfast. Each object is going to have its own vanishing points. When they're lined up with each other, they will happen to converge nicely to the same points. But if they weren't aligned, if they were pointing in different directions, they'd have different vanishing points. Then you can come out to the park and try to see how all these rules apply to organic shapes like trees, even though it's a lot harder because they don't have those nice straight lines like in the street. You can imagine the straight lines around each tree or around a hedge to help make sense of what you're seeing. So here's another thing that's useful to look out for too. All the buildings on this street are the same size because this is a classic London street of terraced houses. And if we draw this house down here, we're likely to make it a bit bigger than it is because it's a house. How can it be so narrow? We're not going to realize how narrow it's become. If you measure the width from our point of view, the width of the faraway one is so small. So how can we make sense of that? Imagine you have a rectangle and draw a cross in it. The middle of the cross is the middle of the box. But if we make the lines converge to one end, they get narrower at one end, like we saw they do with the vanishing points. And then we draw a cross between the corners. Now we can see that the point where those lines cross is much closer to the narrower side. And that's what's happening in this street. This is the midpoint for this row of houses, but it's way off closer to the side where things have gotten smaller. We can even check this by counting how many windows are on each side of that line. And you can see there's about the same number of windows on each side. And you could keep dividing it into halves, and you can see how quickly things get really, really narrow. So we don't really think you need to understand and use all these perspective principles for figure drawings. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about and none of this makes sense, that's absolutely fine. These aren't architectural drawings, and there are other ways to make it work even when there's foreshortening without worrying about vanishing points and stuff like that. But I do think that doing this a little bit, looking for these lines while you're out and about, it just helps you get a little bit more used to it. It helps you get a bit more practice observing and understanding perspective so that you can get a better, more intuitive sense of it. So then, even if you're not consciously thinking about it, your eyes start to see it better. For example, it's really common when things are foreshortened in a figure to not really believe how short things are becoming and elongate them, to draw them less foreshortened than they are. But if you've been observing how narrow things get, often while you're out and about, it's going to help to break down that bad habit in your brain. This idea of observing the world during everyday life with an artist's eye is a way to make art a part of daily life and to integrate it into your eyes. If you like life drawing and really want to build life drawing skills in your eyes, check out our upcoming Life of Drawing program. Like Figuary, it's designed to build up strong habits and make drawing a part of you. It's more long form than our YouTube videos. There's practice integrated into the lessons. It's a 10-week online life drawing program, and you can find out more at lovelifedrawing.com/lifeofdrawing. So I'm thinking about putting out some more videos like this about using and building up your artist's eye when you're out and about. There's things about the light, different kinds of light. Right now there's some pretty strong sunlight, some pretty crisp cast shadows. And then on other days, unfortunately more frequently here, it's overcast and cloudy and the light is more diffused, so you won't get those kind of crisp cast shadows, that kind of thing. So what happens is, there's so much information coming into our eyes. So many infinite gradations and hues, all these different colors, all this different amount of light and everything else. And it's overwhelming. It's too much. Every single blade of grass, you can see. And we can't process all of that. So instead we just categorize everything. We see this bench, and instead of, looking at all the different variations in tone and all of that, we just see bench. We just categorize it as bench. And that helps to make things manageable. We'd go crazy otherwise. We'd be overwhelmed with the information that's coming into our eyes. You want something in the middle where you are seeing what's there. You're seeing reality. You're seeing the lines of perspective. You're seeing the different qualities of light, but you're filtering it down to only the things that really matter, and you're simplifying even then. So you're filtering out a lot, and then you're simplifying what you do take in. And I think if you can do that, it really opens up a new world when you're just walking in the park or walking down the street. So if you like the idea, let me know and I'll make some more videos like this.